Good.
Let's talk about Pharisees. This is something you've been wanting to bring that up for quite some time and you never got around to it. Yeah, what does the Talmud say about the Pharisees? Because you say it says negative things, and I haven't
I'm
had
a
a chance to look.
Pharisee of Pharisees. There's no sage in the Talmud that ever identifies with the Pharisees. So I know there's a lot of people on these YouTube channels who say, of course, we're the descendants of the Pharisees, not according to any statement that appears in the Talmud. As a matter of fact, all the statements that appear in the Talmud regarding the Perushim are negative, that there are a bunch of fanatics who take on what we call today chumrot, like stringencies. And there is in the Mishnah, I said last time about a statement that pretty much aligns with what JC said, of the makos of the Pharisees, of like, just kind of like the exaggerations of these people, of basically like praying in places of honor and crying in the streets. And we see this nowadays. I remember I've been to like shuls during slichot, and the guy, like for 5 minutes, the rabbi suddenly could turn the crying on, and then after 5 minutes, he turns it off. Boom! It's kind of like, all right, let's go. It's all fake. It's all fluff. That is what it has to say. Now, it does have negative things to say about the Sadducees. Actually, the Talmud says there were 7 different groups of Pharisees. One statement it says about the Pharisees, it says, "Fear not the Pharisees and the non-Pharisees, but the hypocrites." Who are the Pharisees? Because their deeds are the deeds of Zimri, but they expect the reward of Pinchas. So no, rabbinic Jews are not Pharisees. And regarding Sadducees, there's a huge misconception around this notion that the Sadducees were in some way against the oral law. And I think this is a topic that's never really been thought out through. For example, the Talmud states that the Sadducees actually sat on the Sanhedrin. And there was even a time that the Sadducees had their own Sanhedrin. In other words, according to the prerequisites of having a court that establishes halakha, they were completely involved in this. The thing is, people take this New Testament approach and a Gentile understanding of the words of Josephus to think that the Sadducees were against what we call Torah Sheba'al Peh. No, what it says is that the Sadducees were against what was known as the legends of the fathers, or the traditions of the fathers. Now, this has nothing to do with halakha, just because nowadays it's been watered down to think that all of halakha was passed down orally from generation to generation from Sinai, when that's not the case. I mean, the halachot, yes, they were passed down from court to court, specifically from the court that developed it all the way to either the court that abolished it or the court that ceased to exist in around the 3rd or 4th century. But no, what was known as the traditions of the fathers is pretty much what we call today Midrash and Agadah. In other words, what they were against were men of the Sanhedrin creating laws out of fluff. In other words, using folklore and legend to develop halakha. Now, it doesn't really matter what this court created halakha from. They could have just all agreed on an issue. But it seems that the Sadducees wanted them, that if they were going to use a source to create some sort of halakha, that it should come from Mikra, from Torah itself, or even the writings. Now, yes, it's true that they were against notions like resurrection of the dead, but that's not a concept that was necessarily in Torah itself. In other words, that was an idea and a perfect example of what's known as the traditions of the fathers. In other words, there was a tradition of some sort of resurrection of the dead, but of course it wasn't in Torah. And this later affiliation with Karaites being the successors to the Sadducees is again another baseless idea. I mean, the Karaites arose in around the 9th century, while the Sadducees pretty much ceased to exist after the destruction of the Second Temple. And regarding the names, Sadducees is Sedukim, because they claim to descend from Sadok, from the high priest, while the Pharisees, the Perushim or Perushim, comes from being Parosh, from separating themselves from everyone else.